Look, if there were any more trailers that came out at Comic-Con, I'm just not going to talk about them. Last one I'm going to talk about, Shazam. So, Shazam premiered, and like Godzilla King of the Monsters, this was one I forgot about, which is why you're getting more than one video in a day, which I really don't like to do, but I can't move other stuff around. I've got too much planned. So, Shazam as a property has always been kind of interesting to me, as because of its fundamental hook being that it is about a young boy who becomes a superhero, it is such a youth fantasy, power fantasy fulfillment, wish fulfillment sort of thing. It's one of the few DC properties that hasn't gone as hard into dark and gritty as almost everything else, because there really isn't much leeway to go super dark in a premise as inherently light as this. That's not to say Shazam has never gone dark, but it's certainly been more resistant to that sort of take than a lot of DC properties have been, especially in the more recent decades. So with that taken into account, it was nice to see them, again, not trying to gritty up this premise. And actually, there's a number of things about the original origin of that I was surprised and got pleasantly surprised that they kept, such as the fact that he gets his powers by running into a wizard in a subway station, and that they managed to kind of update that from the specifics of the original origin in a way that makes it a little less inherently creepy than it actually was. But that was cool. I liked that. I like the vibe of the boy who's playing young Billy, and I really like his foster brother. I like him a lot, and I like their dynamic. They play off each other really, really, really well. Now, when it comes to the adult version, quote-unquote adult, the physically fit superhero version of Shazam, it's not bad. It works. The visually, appearance-wise, like looking at the face, you could buy that they're the same person, so that helps. I did find myself thinking that I wonder if the younger actor and Sean Levi, I don't know if I just completely... No, Zachary Levi. Sean Levy is a director. Sorry. Zachary Levi. I don't know if this is the case, and when I see the whole film, it may turn out not to be the case, but in the trailer, it felt to me like both of them was slightly overcompensating for the adjustments that they had to make so that they could feasibly try and be the same person. What I mean by that is younger Billy seemed a little more mature in his behavior than Shazam did. So it felt almost a little bit like the younger actor was trying to act slightly older, so it would be more believable when the older version happens, whereas the older version seemed to be acting a little bit more childish than the child actually was acting when he was in the body of a child. Now, there are certainly ways that you can explain that circumstances had forced him to become sort of mature ahead of his time, and that getting these powers is a way to let his inner child out a bit more. So, I mean, there are ways to make this work, but I had that thought while watching the trailer, and I can't help but share it a bit. The overall vibe is light, and I do appreciate that. Could have done without the pee joke, because that... I never saw this movie, but I remember this was like back in the 90s when trailers on the front end of movies that you would rent would be heavily loaded with direct-to-video stuff. I remember seeing a trailer for something called Star Kid, where like this kid finds an alien like power suit, and he's like, I need to pee, and the suit's like, preparing for urination, and like this little thing pops out of the chest like it's expecting that to be where the kid pees from. And I remember thinking, even at the time in my young teens, thinking that's kind of dumb, and this gave me that vibe. That joke specifically did. So, and that's another way that's a very superficial way to ramp up the feeling of immaturity of the character. And I have an inherent dislike for that in the same way that I have an inherent dislike of ramping up the quote-unquote maturity by having people swear a lot. You know, it's this superficial, very surface level attempt at immaturity that is kind of the flip of the superficial attempts at maturity that I already dislike, and it kind of rubs me the wrong way for the same fundamental reason. Not as harshly as forced maturity does, but it is in the same vein. But he still has good chemistry and a good vibe with the foster brother character, which again I already liked. So I feel like that relationship is going to be the major through line on this film. It's going to be the major thing that carries it through. That and just sort of embracing the fun. Because I think a big thing that a lot of superhero movies have lost is that having superpowers is a childhood fantasy, and the reason it's a childhood fantasy is because we think it would be fun. And that's not to say that there's no validity in, you know, having a superhero not be fun and have them even not enjoy what they do, and like, this is serious stuff. Someone like Batman, Daredevil, they're perfect for that. But I feel like it's an attitude that is spread across a heck of a lot of characters, and it's nice to have somebody who their powers are not a burden. They are just awesome. Because, like, honestly, the closest we came to that is, like, maybe Spider-Man Homecoming. But even though it's been downplayed versus, say, the earlier iterations of Spider-Man in film, the whole great power, great responsibility thing, Peter is still a character driven by a certain amount of guilt. And, you know, even the young version that we're now getting, that is still there a bit. He feels a ton of responsibility, a ton of guilt, probably backing that up in terms of, you know, wanting to use his power to help people. Whereas the whole thing with Shazam is he's a fundamentally good kid. That's why he gets picked. And so when he's given powers, yeah, he's gonna try and help people, even as silly a way as trying to charge people's phones as he walks through the mall. And I like that embracing of the fantasy of superpowers, as opposed to this separates you from other people and they will hate you, or these are a burden, or you must be a broken person to wield this power. No! It's awesome! Dude can fly and shoot lightning, and he's bulletproof. That's awesome! And I like that this trailer embraces the element of that being awesome. I did still have my little niggles, my little nitpicks on it, but it's nothing major. And given that this was one of the properties that I was the most skeptical about, I'm not going like I was with, say, the Titans trailer. Dear God. Which in many ways this almost feels like the antidote to that trailer. So yeah. Looks solid. I'll be curious to see more about it in terms of, I believe we've got Dr. Sivana as the villain, who, him stopping Shazam's punch was interesting. I don't know a ton about Dr. Sivana. My understanding is that he's traditionally just kind of a mad scientist and couldn't actually go toe-to-toe with the guy, but we'll see. So, Shazam! Did you see it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. You know the stuff to do. I don't need to run down the list. I will note the Patreon. That's kind of the big thing. But the links for all that stuff, various social media, blah, 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 blah. It's all down in the description if you care. And in any case, until next time, this council is adjourned.